was something unsettling about Marvin Hagler long before the first punch was thrown. It was not noise. It was not spectacle. It was control. The shaved head. The fixed stare. The way he stood in the center of the ring as if the canvas belonged to him. He did not perform for the crowd. He did not charm reporters. He came to work. In an era ruled by personality, Hagler built his reputation on discipline and refusal. He believed respect was not negotiated. It was earned the hard way. Every mile he ran in the cold streets of Brockton, every round he sparred without applause, every fight he took on hostile territory shaped a fighter who trusted no one outside his corner. But boxing in the late 1970s and mid-1980s was more than fists and footwork. It was television contracts, promotional leverage, public narratives. Some men thrived in that environment. Hagler endured it. And over time, certain opponents stopped being just challengers. They became reminders of what he believed was unfair, manipulative, or deeply personal. He rarely used dramatic language. He did not publicly rant. Yet, in later interviews, when asked about specific names, his tone shifted. The pauses grew longer, the answers shorter. There were fighters he respected, and there were fighters he never truly forgave. Before we move into the list, we need to remember who Marvin Hagler truly is. To understand why Marvin Hagler carried resentment into certain rivalries, you have to understand the road he walked before he ever wore a championship belt. He was born in Newark, New Jersey, in 1954, a city that would erupt in violence during the riots of 1967. His family relocated to Brockton, Massachusetts, searching for stability. Brockton was a fighting town. It had produced Rocky Marciano, and it valued toughness over talk. That environment fit Hagler perfectly. He was not flashy. He was relentless. As an amateur, he built a strong record, but he did not receive Olympic glory or instant television exposure. When he turned professional in the early 1970s, he quickly learned that talent alone was not enough. He often had to fight on the road. He faced hometown decisions. He accepted difficult matchups that other contenders avoided. Over time, a pattern formed. Hagler believed he had to dominate clearly because he could not rely on close scoring. The controversial draw against Vito Antuofermo in 1979 reinforced that belief. Many observers felt Hagler had done enough to win, yet he walked away without the title. Moments like that shaped his mentality. He stopped trusting the system. He stopped expecting fairness. Even his name became a statement. Frustrated that commentators dropped his nickname, he legally changed it to Marvelous Marvin Hagler. It was not vanity. It was defiance. If the sport would not acknowledge him properly, he would force it to. By the time he became undisputed middleweight champion in 1980, Hagler was already hardened. Every slight, every doubt, every controversial moment had layered into something deeper. When certain opponents spoke carelessly or maneuvered strategically outside the ring, Hagler did not interpret it as business. He took it personally. That is the mindset he carried into the 5 rivalries we are about to examine. Number 5. Thomas Hearns. By 1985, the middleweight division had become a stage for pride as much as power. Thomas Hearns was already known as a devastating puncher, a tall and precise technician trained under the sharp eye of Emanuel Stewart. His victories at welterweight and junior middleweight had built an aura around him. Many believed his height and reach would present a unique problem for Marvin Hagler. In the months leading up to their fight, the narrative tilted in Hearns' favor. Analysts questioned whether Hagler could handle the speed. Some suggested that Hagler's aggressive style would walk him straight into danger. Stewart openly predicted that Hearns would break him down. The implication was clear. Hagler was powerful, but perhaps too mechanical, too predictable, too basic for a fighter as dynamic as Hearns. For a man who had spent his entire career fighting for respect, that framing mattered. Hagler did not respond with long interviews. He trained harder. He came into the ring with blood already running down his face from a cut caused by an accidental clash of heads. The opening round exploded into violence. It was not a chess match. It was controlled fury. Hagler absorbed right hands that would have finished most middleweights, yet he kept pressing forward. He refused to concede space. He refused to concede fear. By the 3rd round, Hearns was hurt. Hagler trapped him, unleashed a crushing right hand, and ended the fight. It became one of the most celebrated 3 rounds in boxing history. Yet victory did not erase what had been said beforehand. Hagler remembered the predictions. He remembered the tone. In later reflections, there was little warmth when he spoke about Hearns. There was respect for his power, Yes, but there was no affection. To Hagler, Hearns represented a moment when the world once again doubted him publicly. He had answered in the only language he trusted. Still, the edge remained. Number 4. Roberto Duran. By the time Marvin Hagler faced Roberto Duran in 1983, the fight was layered with reputation long before the opening bell. Duran was already a legend, a former lightweight king, a warrior from Panama who had shared the ring with the best of his era. He carried charisma, defiance, and a willingness to provoke. He knew how to turn a promotion into theater. Hagler had no patience for theater. In the build-up, Duran spoke with confidence that bordered on dismissal. He questioned Hagler's sophistication. He implied that the champion relied more on strength than skill. The subtext was sharp. Duran wanted to frame the contest as brains against brutality. For a fighter like Hagler, who had spent years refining technique and discipline, that narrative cut deep. He did not see himself as crude or limited. He saw himself as complete. Inside the ring, the fight unfolded differently than many expected. Instead of a reckless slugfest, it became tactical. Duran moved intelligently, countered carefully, and forced Hagler to adjust. For long stretches, the bout was competitive. It was not the demolition many had predicted. Hagler had to stay patient. He had to resist chasing the knockout. That in itself may have frustrated him. Hagler valued clarity. He liked to break opponents physically and mentally. Against Duran, the fight demanded control rather than destruction. When the final bell sounded, Hagler won a unanimous decision. The belt remained with him. The official outcome was clear, but the tension never dissolved. Duran's approach had not been built on respect. It had been built on disruption. He tried to unsettle the champion, to redefine him publicly before the fight even began. Hagler did not appreciate that. To him, boxing was simple. Train hard, show up prepared. Let the fists decide. He had little tolerance for psychological games. Years later, when reflecting on that era, Hagler acknowledged Duran's toughness. He did not deny his ability, yet there was no warmth in the memory. The rivalry was professional, but never friendly. Duran represented something Hagler distrusted, a fighter who could control the story outside the ropes as much as the action inside them. For Hagler, that was not admirable. It was unnecessary. Number 3. Vito Antuofermo. Long before the super fights and global attention, there was a night in 1979 that shaped Marvin Hagler's distrust of the system. The opponent was Vito Antuofermo, the reigning middleweight champion. It was Hagler's first true shot at the title, and he entered the ring knowing he would likely need more than a close performance to leave with the belt. From the opening rounds, Hagler pressed the action. He dictated the tempo, landed the cleaner combinations, and forced Antuofermo backward for long stretches. The champion had moments, especially during a late rally that bloodied Hagler and energized the crowd. But over 15 rounds, many observers believed the challenger had done enough. He had controlled the geography of the fight. He had imposed his will. When the decision was announced as a split draw, Hagler stood still. He did not scream. He did not flip tables. But the look on his face told a different story. Inside his mind, something hardened. He believed he had earned that title. Instead, he walked away empty-handed. In post-fight interviews, he spoke carefully, yet the disappointment was visible. It was not just about a belt, it was about validation. The draw forced a rematch the following year. This time, Hagler left nothing to interpretation. He stopped Antuofermo and finally secured the undisputed championship. On paper, justice had been served. Emotionally, the wound remained. Hagler often referenced that first fight as proof that he could not rely on judges. It reinforced his belief that dominance was the only safe path. Close rounds were dangerous. Margins were risky. From that point forward, he aimed to remove doubt whenever possible. Antuofermo may not have been the most famous name of Hagler's era, but the rivalry mattered deeply. It was the moment Hagler realized that being the better fighter did not always guarantee the right outcome. That lesson shaped the rest of his career. Number 2. Alan Minter. If the draw with Vito Antuofermo planted doubt, the fight with Alan Minter exposed hostility. In 1980, Marvin Hagler traveled to London to challenge Minter for the undisputed middleweight championship. On paper, it was a straightforward title fight. In reality, it felt like Hagler was walking into enemy territory long before he stepped between the ropes. Minter had publicly suggested that no foreign fighter would take his belt on British soil. The remark lingered. Whether intended as pride or provocation, it carried an undertone Hagler did not ignore. For a man who already believed he had to fight harder for recognition, the implication felt personal. From the opening bell, Hagler imposed himself. He cut Minter early. He pressed him backward. He dictated the exchanges with a level of control that left little doubt about who the stronger man was that night. By the third round, Minter's face was badly damaged. The referee stepped in and waved it off. Hagler had achieved what he had chased for years. He was now the undisputed champion. But the moment was chaotic. As soon as the stoppage was announced, objects began flying into the ring. Bottles, debris. The atmosphere turned volatile. Hagler had to be escorted out quickly for his own safety. The image of him leaving the ring under threat became one of the most striking visuals of his career. For Hagler, that night confirmed something he had long suspected. Respect was conditional. He had won clearly. He had dominated the champion. Yet instead of celebration, he faced anger. He later spoke about how often he felt like the outsider, even as champion. The Minter fight was not just about capturing a title. It was about surviving an environment that did not want him to win. It deepened his belief that he would rarely be embraced the way other stars were. Minter represented more than an opponent. He symbolized the resistance Hagler constantly pushed against, and that resistance stayed with him. Number 1. Sugar Ray Leonard. By the time Sugar Ray Leonard stepped back into the spotlight in 1987, Marvin Hagler had ruled the middleweight division for years. He had defended his title repeatedly. He had survived wars. He had outlasted challengers. His reign was built on consistency and physical dominance. Leonard's return changed the atmosphere instantly. He had retired. He had worked as a commentator. He had stayed visible, charismatic, beloved by the public. Then, he chose his moment. He announced a comeback against the reigning champion. From the start, Leonard dictated the terms: ring size, gloves, promotion. The structure of the event leaned toward spectacle as much as competition, Hagler noticed. During the build-up, Leonard framed himself as the smart technician, the ring general who could outmaneuver the champion. He spoke confidently, sometimes dismissively. The narrative began to shift. Instead of focusing on Hagler's dominance, discussions centered on whether Leonard's speed and intelligence could outthink him. On fight night, Leonard executed a disciplined strategy. He flurried at the end of rounds. He moved constantly. He created the appearance of control. Hagler, who had often started aggressively in previous defenses, fought more cautiously early on. As the rounds progressed, the contest tightened. It was competitive. It was tactical. It was close. When the final bell rang, the decision went to Leonard. Hagler did not celebrate the competitiveness of the fight. He did not praise the drama. He questioned the scoring. Many observers did as well. For years afterward, debates continued about who truly deserved the victory, but the official record would never change. Shortly after that loss, Hagler left the United States. He relocated to Italy. He distanced himself from American boxing culture. The shift was abrupt and symbolic. He had always felt he needed to win decisively to avoid doubt. In his mind, he had not been given the benefit of that standard. Leonard was not just another opponent. He became the final chapter of Hagler's career. A chapter marked not by knockout or dominance, but by controversy and unfinished emotion. That is why this rivalry stands above the rest. Looking back at these 5 rivalries, a pattern becomes clear. Marvin Hagler did not resent opponents simply because they were talented. He resented moments when he believed the playing field shifted away from merit. Thomas Hearns questioned his technical ability. Roberto Duran tried to redefine him through psychological framing. Vito Antuofermo became a symbol of scoring that denied him validation. Alan Minter's night in London showed him how hostile a victory could feel. Sugar Ray Leonard represented a system where timing and leverage mattered as much as punches landed. Through all of it, Hagler remained consistent. He trained the same way. He fought forward. He demanded clarity. His philosophy was simple. If you are the better fighter, prove it in a way that leaves no argument. That mindset produced one of the most dominant championship reigns in middleweight history. It also produced isolation. He trusted his preparation more than public opinion. He trusted rounds more than headlines. The resentment he carried was not theatrical. It was internal. It came from a man who believed effort should equal reward. When that equation felt disrupted, he did not forget. In many ways, those rivalries sharpened him. They forced him to evolve. They hardened his resolve. Without them, the legend of Marvelous Marvin Hagler might not feel as unbreakable as it does today.